Welcome to the Brothers Random Show. My name is Travis.
I'm Michael.
And we are two ordinary brothers discussing extraordinary ideas and some random shit. So the topics on this show range from theology, masculinity, stories, movies, philosophy, pop culture, and many other subjects. We often talk about the people we admire and the wisdom they share, people such as Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, who we believe is the sage of our time. Michael, why are we here?
Today we're talking about Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer.
We're in a race against the Nazis. And I know what it means if the Nazis have a bomb.
We have a 12-month head start.
18.
How could you possibly know that?
We've got one hope. All America's industrial might and scientific innovation connected here. A secret laboratory.
We finally both were able to see it, and we're going to kind of discuss that. We'll save spoilers towards the middle of the show. We'll let you guys know. But then first off, we wanted to kind of talk a little bit about our just kind of the history a little bit with Christopher Nolan, and starting off there before we get into Oppenheimer. You've been a big fan ever since Batman,
Memento.
And that was really his first, wasn't that his?
That was his first
big
movie. Memento was kind of splashed him all over. He was kind of this darling when I was going to film school. He's this darling of barely starting. People were like, "Oh, have you seen this movie Memento?" And everybody's like, "What movie?" And it was kind of a start. And then all of a sudden he does Insomnia, that's got a bunch of big stars in it, and it's his first. I think that was actually his first step into studio filmmaking. And he had I guess this legend is he had a pitch meeting with Warner Brothers, and they gave him the Batman franchise, which had been basically put into the ground by Joel Schumacher's terrible movies. And anyway, he gets this break, and Batman Begins is like this huge hit, and then The Dark Knight is like massive hit, and I guess the rest is history. So for me, I mean, I would have to say that Batman Begins is where I really started to notice him. But
and most people, I think most people, that's kind of where they started to. And then I think it was after that I can't remember what I was probably watching a documentary talking about him, and it seemed like after those two hits, a lot of the bigwigs started to notice him and be like, okay, we should probably grab this guy and let him kind of have the reins.
Yeah.
Now we've talked about this before, but sometimes these guys, they have some successes, and they get yes men and no
around them
and no men, and not to get too of it, but basically there's a few places where I think there could have been some no men around him with Oppenheimer. I think there was some things that some people could have just been like
the length of the movie. That's the big
3 hours long.
It's a 3 hour and 15-minute long movie. So this is one of the reasons that it was so hard to see for me, because I just could not find a good opportunity where I could set aside 3 hours. And my local cinema announced that they were getting rid of it, and this would be the last night. And I just kind of like, oh, okay, I got to go.
Yeah.
So,
well,
so
that's, if you take into time, like going to the theater and then the previews, I don't know about you, but the theater I went to had a lot of previews before it. So it's
probably a 4 hour night for you.
It was a big long time.
So, and I honestly probably would have been able to see it at least 2 or 3 times if it hadn't been for that running time. And I really wanted to see it in IMAX, and there just isn't a good IMAX theater around where I live. But were you able to see it in IMAX?
No. Big movie theater, but it wasn't IMAX.
Yeah, unfortunately.
It was pretty epic. There were a few scenes that were pretty epic. Obviously they put a lot of work into the first explosion. But other than that, I mean, I think it was it's a drama. So it was mostly about the dialogue and the human emotion and connection and the interplay between characters and stuff like that. So a smaller screen, I think, was probably okay.
Yeah,
to see this.
And I've been told that it's really good to see in an IMAX. Everybody I listen to or follow online has said that, but you're right. It's not an action movie. It's very much men talking in rooms for the most part, and that's pretty much what it is. And then Hollywood used to make movies like this all of the time. Like 12 Angry Men was a big deal. What else? There's like almost all of Hitchcock's movies were people talking in rooms and then punctuated by moments of violence. So almost nothing in the 1950s, 60s, and probably well into the 70s was a lot. There were a lot of dramas. There was just people talking in rooms, and it's kind of a bygone thing, which is what's so unique about this movie is that you're seeing something that you and I used to grow up with, but is not a regular thing that happens anymore. This movie does not get made without Christopher Nolan's name attached to it nowadays.
Yeah.
You don't see R-rated 3-hour long dramas anymore at all. Braveheart is a 3-hour long drama action film or epic film, I guess you could say. And
it's probably fall in the epic.
Yeah, but it's a drama.
But 12 Angry Men is a great example. We love It's a Wonderful Life, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of that is just interpersonal dialogue between people in rooms, there's sometimes outside, but it's mostly just about like the dialogue and talking with each other. Anyway, do we want to get into just like first impressions?
First impressions I liked it. It was overlong. I didn't feel it until the bomb goes off, and then after that it felt long. However, all of that is very interesting. It's a more surreal movie than he's made before. Like all of his movies are kind of surreal, but he doesn't do he doesn't do people's inner thoughts very often. It's a lot of Oppenheimer's inner thoughts visually. You know what I'm saying? So like he'll have these moments where he's envisioning like a spectrals coming together and stuff like that. So this is very different ground for Christopher Nolan. Most of his are he intercuts a lot, and this movie is one long intercut. Meaning you have a scene here and a scene here, and they're cutting them together.
Right.
And it happens a lot. And usually it's dialogue scenes. So the most famous part is where, excuse me, in The Dark Knight, Jim Gordon at the very end of The Dark Knight, he's saying we have to chase him because,
he's the
watchful protector,
or he's the hero we need, but not the one we deserve.
Yeah, he's the hero we need, not the one we deserve speech. So this is a long speech, but it's intercut with Batman, Christian Bale's Batman on the bat pod driving up and his cape's flipping in the wind.
And also it shows Commissioner Gordon like destroying the bat light
and it's
like showing
intercut.
these things.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a scene, a dialogue from one scene that's intercut with many other scenes while you see the Batman driving off into the sunlight or moonlight or whatever you want to call it. Anyway, the whole point is that this movie completely does this all. And this
whole movie.
The whole movie is one scene intercut with another scene moving into another scene. And for me, that's what kept me interested, because if it was just the scenes of dialogue, this movie would
one
have been,
right after the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. It really did kind of help it kind of keep you on your toes.
Yes.
I really did. That was kind of brilliant how he did that. One thing if I were to see it again, I would try to take notice of when is it black and white and when is it not?
Yes.
And how that has to play. I want to say
one is past, and one is not the future like we know the future, but like one is when all the characters are older, and one is when all the characters are younger. So it's basically flipping from one era to another era. So it's flipping from World War II to the Cold War.
Cold War, yeah.
So the way I see it is like the black and white is mostly during the Cold War, and the color is during World War II.
Right.
That's how I would.
I don't know that actually played out through the whole
movie
film, though.
Yeah,
I want to say he switched it up a couple different times.
Yeah.
Because anyway,
it still works as a movie. Like it still flows. It's still a lot of people are complaining about the length of the movie, and it is very long. It's a biopic. So this is so Christopher Nolan has done a World War II movie with Dunkirk. That was his first foray into history. And he's a big fan of history, so we might see more biopics of different characters. He's been trying to make a biopic
since this one did so well. I mean,
it did do well.
Surprisingly, R-rated and 3 hours long, and it did this well. Which, do you want to hit the numbers?
Let's see. The numbers are his. So domestically, this movie made 312 million as of this recording. And
so they probably made their money back just on domestic.
Well,
because it was 100 million to make.
Worldwide, it's 865 million. So that's pretty good. I mean, I would say that was pretty good.
On 100 million, is that right? It was 100 million.
Yeah, it was 100 million, supposedly around 100 million to make. And
they say that usually it's more than that if it's for like
it's an advertising. P&A.
Yeah, advertising, all that. Yeah. So it's probably a little bit more than that, but 800 million,
that's nothing to shy away from. It is
right?
Considered a hit. But this is a hit like we haven't seen before. When was the last time you saw a rated R movie? When was the last time you saw a rated R movie with nudity? When was the last time you saw a rated R movie that had nudity, that was 3 hours long and had no action in it?
Yeah. I mean, or that the action was drama. That it was a drama action. Yeah.
He cuts it like an action movie, but it's a drama. So his cutting is rapid. It's a very rapid cutting. It's very kinetic. It's not like Paul Greengrass. He made like the sequels to the Bourne trilogy. So the camera's moving everywhere, and that's his style and his kinetic. Like it's very, very kinetic. But Nolan, the camera is stationary, but his cutting style is kinetic. So it's very rapid cutting. It doesn't linger very long for anything. My biggest complaint about the Dark Knight with Christian Bale was that I thought there were scenes that should have lingered a little longer. And you can tell that they cut that movie to accommodate a shorter, because I think that movie's almost 2 hours long. So he's trying to put a lot into a very minimal amount of time. and you always know it because some scenes I think should stay longer. So you remember the scene where Batman jumps after Maggie Gyllenhaal's character, Rachel Dawes.
Mm-hmm.
They fall from the building because the Joker's thrown her out of the window.
Yeah.
So he falls, lands on a car, and she's kind of dazed, and she looks at him. She says, "Harvey, is he okay?" And Batman goes, "He's okay." And there should have been, in my opinion, right there should have been a moment between the two of them, but we didn't linger there. It cut immediately.
Yeah.
So that was my biggest complaint about that movie, because I think that is a perfect film. And I found myself wanting a little bit more in certain areas of this film and a little bit less in other areas, if you get my meaning.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway,
I loved some of the kind of symbolism shots that he was getting in this film. We're not into spoilers, so but there were moments where he was kind of worried morally about what he had just done.
yeah.
And people were sitting there clapping and praising him, but the visuals where you could kind of see where Christopher was using the visuals so that you could, as a viewer, kind of understand the moral dilemma he was looking at.
Yeah.
Within himself. I thought it was brilliant.
Well,
some of those things were just amazing.
We should maybe say what this movie's about for people who don't know. If you've lived under a rock for the last month and a half, you'd know more about this
or
movie.
Didn't pay any attention in
history class.
History class.
So this is a biopic about the man who made the atomic bomb, or essentially
the father of the atomic bomb. They called him. So
yeah, well, and he ran the program that made the atomic bombs, the
Manhattan Project. Yeah,
the bombs that actually bombed Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and it's the only time a country has ever used the A-bomb against another country. And so anyway, that's basically, if you paid attention in history, you'd recognize his name. Everybody knows who Einstein is for some reason, but not a lot of people know who Oppenheimer is. I mean, he was famous in his time, but I actually don't remember learning about him at all in history class. I remember talking about Einstein, but I don't remember ever talking about him. But maybe that's one of those gaps in my learning when I was younger. But you're right. I do agree that it's the visuals that he uses to convey his guilt over making the bomb, and the movie makes him a really sympathetic character, which is interesting because he shouldn't be a sympathetic character. Like, I guess we should get into spoilers. Do you want to do that?
Sure. I was just trying to get overall thoughts before spoilers, but
I really liked it. It's a sobering film, and I don't know if it's like a repeat watch just because it's so dang long.
Right. I liked it. I actually throughout felt very entertained. I don't know that a lot of people, it was funny because earlier this week I went to the dentist, and the dental hygienist and I were just chatting, and she had seen it, but she fell asleep in it. So I don't know how much of that was going on, but because it does run long, it is a drama. So if you're not into that kind of stuff, then yeah, you probably would fall asleep in it. But I really felt like it kept me kind of in the game, like at the edge of my seat kind of thing. But after watching it, and I feel like this was probably part of the runtime, as well as just how heavy the movie was itself.
Mm-hmm.
I felt exhausted afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just like, whew, wow, okay. Well, I'm glad that's kind of over with. Like, right? Like it
definitely
felt
a
almost
film.
like a chore to see this film.
Yeah. Well, it was. I mean, it was hard for me to get to the movie theater to see it, to cut out a chunk of time like that. But yeah, I agree. It's one of those films that stays with you for a long time. I think I was thinking about it the day after. I was thinking about it for a while. I was just like, man, that's just a heavy movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Heavy
anyway.
movie, but overall, I did like it. So
yeah, me too. So, all right. Spoiler section now. I was not expecting the surrealistic moments of sexuality in this movie. He is not a filmmaker that does a lot of sexual stuff. And I was really surprised.
Christopher Nolan has generally stayed away from sexual things. And it could just be part and parcel of making a film about Oppenheimer, because I had no idea that he was a womanizer. I guess womanizer in the
philanderer.
A philanderer. I guess that would probably be a better way of saying. But like, I had no idea, and I did watching it. I was like, is this historically accurate? Is this like?
Well, supposedly they cut back on it a little bit, because there's one moment in the movie. There's another scientist's wife that he was talking to at some point in the movie.
Yeah.
And I forget her character's name, but supposedly he had an affair with her too. So they allude to a lot of his philandering ways, but I mean, I think that they were trying to depict him as a sympathetic character, but at the same time he might have been a sociopath, because there's this scene earlier in the movie where he has a professor that is browbeating him, that's just mean to him, and he decides to inject a poison into the apple. Now, according to what I've heard, this is historically accurate. He admitted to this at some point, an apple for that. And at last minute, he decides against the apple, or whatever happens. But it is an interesting look into a man who might have just thought that he was a sociopath, or like he didn't have empathy. And at some point in the movie, he becomes empathetic because he's having a moral crisis with the fact that he may have invented the demise of the human race.
Yeah. You see it a little bit when he feels bad that this mistress, I guess you could say, this gal that he was having an affair with, deletes herself. And the visual there was really interesting. Did you notice this? But you see a couple times where he's got these black gloves on, and they show it actually pretty well. And while they're showing the little clips of her situation where she deletes herself, you see one little bit, you see a hand.
A hand. Yeah. And that was interesting.
I swear it was the glove that they had. There were little things like that throughout this film, little tiny things that you notice.
That's why it's Christopher Nolan's most surreal movie, in my opinion. Yeah. Because of those things. Because I don't think he's actually saying. So there's three ways to read that. It's either she was killed by the United States government because she was a communist, and she knew, and they didn't want her taking secrets from Oppenheimer's research to the Communist Party. There's that to read. That maybe she was murdered. she supposedly drowned herself in historical fact, but there's that way of reading it, like she actually did do that. And then there's also the guilt that he had by pretty much breaking up with her, and maybe it's a surreal moment where he's in his head is believing that
he's feeling some guilt
because of his actions,
some guilt in it. Yeah,
because of his actions, it might be him just envisioning his hand drowning her, which is such so the fact is she drowned herself, but we don't know if, like, why. And so Christopher Nolan's taking some liberties there, going, well, did the US government get rid of her, or does Oppenheimer believe that he inadvertently killed her because he broke up with her? all those moral conundrums that happen in the movie. That's what makes the movie really interesting, is it has those moments, like it's so surreal, because when they have a deposition of him because they're trying to find out if he has communist sympathies, because he hung out with a bunch of communists in the early parts of World War II. And so they have this deposition, and his wife is sitting behind him. And there's all these people basically going through his life. And there's this moment where you realize that he's naked. And then you realize
the camera goes behind somebody, and then it shows him naked. And they're talking to him about his affair and asking him, and he's coming clean about his affair
in front of his wife,
which he had already done with his wife, played by Emily Blunt, which was
brilliant.
She was amazing.
She's amazing in this movie. Film. She's barely given any, what do you call it? She's barely given any material to work with. She's not in it for very long, but she is. Every scene she's in, she's good. She just
blows it out of the park. It's crazy.
Yeah, she's probably the best working actress right now.
And so he had already told her about it, and it was the whole scene afterwards was very. It goes behind, pans behind this guy, and it shows him naked, and then it shows and it's all just, it's kind of just. It's symbolizing. It's kind of just
it's
giving you a symbol of
his mindset,
how this feels. Yeah. So he's feeling naked. He's feeling naked.
And then there's a moment where this is one of the few points in the movie where it's not from his perspective anymore. It's from Emily Blunt's perspective. And she sees him naked, and then sees the woman he had an affair with on top of him, and she's naked. And then she looks directly at Emily Blunt's character. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a ton. Like, a lot of people think that the sex in this is really like stilted, because Christopher Nolan, like, if a robot had written the sexual stuff in this, that's what they're saying. Like, I know a bunch of people that I've been following that are saying that about this movie, but I took it as, maybe he's a stilted character and he's not a very loving character, but he has these affairs. And so you feel as an audience, like, this isn't how real people interact with other people. And it's a brilliant scene, but it's also a scene, I think it's meant to make you uncomfortable. Like, it's meant to, because it made me uncomfortable. Like,
I'm putting in visual the tension in the air of the room. Yeah. Right. It's putting in visual that tension, because she looks now, and the girl looks at the wife, and there's that tension.
Yeah.
Right there. Okay. This is the brilliance of Christopher Nolan. He's doing that. So you as an audience are invited into this room to feel the tension in this room.
Yeah, tension in this room.
It does it brilliantly.
Because I felt that way. And I think that's what he was going for. I think he was like, I want people to be uncomfortable right now.
Right?
And
That exactly.
It makes you
100%.
it makes you wonder if the shooting the scene was uncomfortable, because
I'm sure it probably was
it had
very
to have been.
uncomfortable.
There's like 5 people in there's like
yeah,
5 dudes in this room,
all in suits
and all in
like,
suits, and then there's 2 naked people in the middle of the room, and it's just, oh my gosh, like this would have been brutal to shoot.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what he was going for. But so there's earlier scenes in the movie that have basically where he comes up with the line, I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. So this line was famously quoted in an interview that he gave way later in his life. And he claimed
he said that after the bomb went off and it
Mhm.
worked, he said that it's from the Gita, something Gita,
yeah, it's a book, it's a
Rama Gita, I think
Rama
that
Gita,
is that
I think is what it is.
It's Hindu scripture.
Mysticism. I think it's mysticism of some kind. But
he said that the line came to his mind after the bomb went off.
Yeah.
I have become death, the destroyer of worlds. Now
this is probably
way later that he said that.
Yeah.
Whether or not he really thought that in his head, whether or not,
but
what have you,
it's a weird take. So this is a complaint that some of the people I follow had. It's a weird take to have him come up with that line when reading the book, this Hindu scripture, while he's having sex with his paramour. It's a weird, I don't know why. Is he trying to say that maybe the destroyer of worlds has a, I don't know, sexual fetish to laced with his psychopathy? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know what maybe he was trying to do, because it's a weird scene. She's asking him to read it while she's naked, and then they have sex while he's reading it. It's just it was a weird take. So
maybe that's so Chris in this film was taking a lot of visuals to kind of bring out a point or to make
psychology.
The audience feel something.
Yeah.
Right.
Which all good filmmakers should do.
Here's a funny thing is, like, I kind of knew a little bit of the history. So I kind of knew that was a phrase that Oppenheimer thought of, that he, said he thought of after the bomb. Yeah. So when he said it while he's having sex with, I forget the
character's name,
the mistress, but it made it. So I knew that's what they were setting it up for. And I was just like, yeah, that's kind of weird. But he might have been trying to portray something. And like you said, it might be that he was trying to portray this kind of psychopath nature
tendency.
Yeah. Within him that,
I think that's what he was trying to convey. But at some point he changes, and I think he changes when they actually drop the bomb on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Mm-hmm. And so Nolan's about change in character, and I believe that's probably what he was going for in this, because he's a flawed character all throughout. And at some point he decides, I'm going to work against the world having atomic bombs, even though he created it. So the latter half of his life is spent trying to get, like, the United Nations to de-arm all the countries in the world, which he didn't succeed. I mean, there's still the atomic bombs that we have in our world. I don't know the number, but I've heard that it is huge. Pretty dismal. Yeah.
And
so I think that's the change in the character. So he's got a psychopathic edge to him, right? He tries killing his professor at the beginning. Yeah. He's lacing his I don't know, desire to dominate the world somehow with his sexual proclivities. I don't know if that ranges into that, but I think Nolan's always working, in my mind, he's always working. Here's what we're seeing, and he's always working somewhere in this under the surface with a psychological idea about the characters. Yeah. So I mean, that's I think that's probably what he's going for. And then at some point, like with the destruction, with the detonation of the first bomb, and realizing that he didn't destroy the world, but maybe inadvertently destroyed it.
Yeah, which is that's the ending
of the movie.
Yeah. We said spoilers, but that's the basically end of the movie, where he is talking with Albert Einstein and basically says,
I think we started the end of the world.
Well, and throughout the film, they tip a hat, they nudge a reference to this thought that a lot of them had, that there was like a not 0% chance. And that's all they referred to it
that
as.
They would ignite the atmosphere.
That they would ignite the atmosphere, and basically the atomic reaction would continue on forever.
Are we saying there's a chance that when we push that button, we destroy the world? Chances are near zero. Near zero. What do you want from theory alone? 0 would be nice.
Yes.
And literally, I mean, and I don't know, they never say what the possible percentage is. They only refer to it as not 0.
Yeah.
And Matt Damon's character, I loved that scene where he explains that to Matt Damon's character, and Matt Damon's just like, so there's a chance. And
yeah, Matt Damon plays the general that got the program going. And
then Matt Damon did a great job too.
So. And Matt Damon played my favorite character in the movie. I mean, he's funny and crass and kind of mean through the whole thing, but he's got a lot of charm to him. And I don't know if it's just because he's Matt Damon, but it's really like, it's a really underrated, like, levity. Like, he brings a lot of levity to the movie. I
actually, the charm that he had and the winning over of people and stuff that he had throughout the film, I actually think represented America. I think it was meant to represent America, because think about it. America was bringing all these people in, like refugees and Jews, and people were coming in to
do this project,
do this project, but also just kind of falling in love with America.
Yeah.
And you as a audience member, you kind of fall in love with Matt Damon's character, because I think he is actually the one that's kind of representing America in this film.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, it was a thought that I had throughout, but
he also kind of closes his eyes to the horror of the thing, like everybody does.
Yeah.
Everybody's got some cognitive dissonance from the horror of dropping a bomb on people that obliterates them.
Well, and also the cognitive dissonance that they were going to push that button and start this chain reaction that they were not sure would not end.
Would not end. Yeah.
So it was one of those things, is like, it could have been the thing that killed all of us, but
it could still be. That's the point of the movie.
Well, and that's the point of the movie.
That's the end of the movie is
he says to Albert Einstein.
He says to Albert Einstein, I think we started the chain reaction that will destroy the world. And that's what makes it a heavy movie, because basically the end of the movie is a close-up of Cillian Murphy as Oppenheimer's face, and he's just looking and he's thinking, and he has these surreal moments of seeing like these bombs coming. So there's a cloud and these bombs these missiles start going up through the clouds, and it's like hundreds and hundreds of them, and he's obviously thinking this is that I have started what will be the end of this world, which is a really heavy thought. And that's why it leaves you just kind of going,
yeah.
Not only Nolan does this a lot. They're good movies, but they're movies that you leave not feeling great afterwards.
Yeah.
And I think that's his, like, he's a serious filmmaker. He doesn't make comedies. You're not supposed to walk out going, you know,
I felt great after Tenet. I felt great after the Batman movies.
Inception's a
Inception.
perfect, I felt really great after that too. But there's still a heaviness to them that you don't get, that you wouldn't get in a comedy. And you know, there's a lot of people out there that have criticisms of his, you know, work, because he is a very, he brings a lot of levity to his movies, because there's always some jokey character, you know, like the Matt Damon character, but his movies are always overall really serious. And I think that's perfectly fine. We're inundated with fluff, you know, all summer long. Everything. So Guardians of the Galaxies can be considered a comedy. Mario Brothers has no serious anything in it. It's just all fluff, and even though it's a fun movie, it's just fluff. This movie makes you think about it way after you've seen it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm still kind of mulling it over. I wish I had been able to see it several times, because there's a lot going on. Like I said, under the surface, like you get this biopic, but you also get kind of a like meditation on psychopathy.
Well, and a meditation on the atom bomb.
Yeah, existential crisis of
the
end of the world.
Existential crisis of having made this thing, and this thing that will never be put back into Pandora's box.
Yeah,
right.
It's basically like, Pandora's box is open, and and you get the wrong kind of people in there. I think this is also probably a little bit of like shaking the finger at, we got the wrong people in control of these things. Robert Downey Jr.'s character represents, because Robert Downey Jr.'s character could pretty much be considered the villain of this film, even though he does nothing to be other than trying to sabotage Oppenheimer's reputation.
Yeah,
but
for political purposes.
Yeah, for political purposes. And I think it's also, the movie's also saying, we've got the wrong people in charge of this. You know, that we shouldn't have basically politicians that can't string a sentence together in charge of this stuff. We shouldn't, there should be, because we're talking about the end of the world.
Yeah. I mean, a guy threw out this theory to me once that I thought of after watching this film. And that was that the advent of the atomic bomb actually kind of stalemated all out wars and opened up the war of the kind of small skirmishes,
like Cold Wars.
Basically, the Cold War kind of opened up after World War II.
Proxy wars.
The Cold War kind of opened up this era of small little skirmish wars rather than these all out
big wars. Like like World War I. World War I, massive.
World War II, and basically, basically where a bunch of men, like as many men as you possibly can, go and die. Like that was basically how war, just you go and you kill each other. until one kills more than the other, and it just
and
that's
somebody
how
surrenders.
it goes.
Yeah.
But the advent of the atomic bomb actually opened this, where it's these small little kind of strategic skirmishes.
Well, and
because the everybody knows that once we start dropping these, it could be the end of
everything.
And
so I think that's what they're trying to put across is his motivation in this movie.
Mhm.
His motivation for making this bomb is to cease fire. Like everybody, once we have this, everybody's going to go, okay, no more war. We don't want to destroy ourselves. He's naive about that because it didn't stop war. It didn't. We still had the Vietnam War afterwards. We had the Cold War that was maybe people died, but it wasn't an all out, it wasn't like World War II. We've had the Afghan War. We've had a ton of wars since this. So it hasn't stopped war, and he believed it would. I think that he naively believed it would, because I mean he seemed like he was an optimist. Well, and this movie's trying to put that across, that he believed that this would end all war. It just made and what inadvertently happened. This is what's interesting about humans, is there's always an inadvertent reaction to so COVID-19 lockdowns. We inadvertently caused problems for children, learning problems. So there's always the unintended consequences of an action. And I think he wanted it to end all war, but instead it just made everything a proxy war or a Cold War or like you said, a small skirmish in comparison, a small skirmish. Because I don't think it didn't end wars.
Interesting. I was just looking at some of the numbers of wars, and World War I, World War II, and this is American soldier deaths.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Civil War was the worst. Yeah, by far. World War I, World War II, were excluding the Civil War. World War I and World War II were the worst. Vietnam War, and then it comes Vietnam War. Yeah, so I mean, I guess it's not quite right that that the advent of the atomic bomb stopped, because Korean War and Vietnam War were up there. So interesting.
Well, and what's interesting is it's almost like they knew that it would be destructive when they dropped them, but I don't think they knew the extent of the destruction. Because according to the movie, it was like 170,000 people died when they dropped
and then
the two bombs.
And then another 50,000 from the radiation poisoning.
Yeah, the fallout.
That's what, because he said it came to about 210,000, I think is what they.
But
so I another 40,000.
What was the casualties of World War II?
Just on the American soldiers, this is not counting. This is just American soldiers, was 405,000.
That's a lot. Jeez. Because they said that they were already losing. The Japanese were already losing, but the Japanese were kind of notorious for not surrendering.
He talks about this a little bit in the book Unbroken.
Oh yeah.
He and it was kind of cool in the book. It showed a picture of the flyer that they dropped, because they did drop flyers on the cities telling everyone to get out. I mean, that.
Yeah.
I'm not it's weird. I guess maybe I am a little bit defending America in this, because they knew, and they talk about this to the and in the movie, they talk about this a little bit, and they basically say we're going to drop one. And I doubt they had a room where they said what they were planning on doing to a bunch of scientists. I'm sure that probably did not happen, but they basically said we're going to drop one to let them know it's there, that we have it, and then we're going to drop another just to let them know we can keep doing this. And that's what secretary is sitting there saying, I can't give you guys details, but I'm letting you guys know that we have intel that tells us that Japan is never going to quit. And so, I mean, and that he talks to that a little bit in the book, Unbroken,
that they were just not going to quit.
They
were known for killing themselves before they surrendered.
It was they had kind of enacted this thing where they were just like, we're gonna die to the last man before we give up, basically.
Yeah.
And so, and they were
well, and this is the moral conundrum of this movie, is like it doesn't really take a stance like on what would be it doesn't really take a stance that we did the moral right thing as Americans. It kind of makes it look like it wasn't a moral right thing,
that it wasn't a good thing. And
I don't know how to.
I don't know.
I mean, I didn't live then. It had been.
I'm sure we would
war.
We'll probably get a lot of hate for not standing on the fact that we should not have done that. But to finish my thought, what I was saying is that they did go. They dropped all these flyers on both cities, telling everyone to get out.
Yeah,
and the
Imperial Guards.
Yep.
Didn't allow people to leave.
They were prosecuting. They were. It was a crime to have these flyers. They were gathering them up and keeping them from the people.
Well, and they weren't allowing the people to leave. That's another thing.
Right.
So that people
I didn't know that, but yeah. So
I thought I read somewhere that they didn't allow people to leave the cities even after that. So, and I guess maybe they thought it was like a bluff, like they were saying,
yeah, we're going to call America's bluff. It's like, what is this?
America's
now bluff. We're calling America's bluff.
There's no way that they can drop a city with one bomb.
I think, to be honest, I think what we should have done is dropped it in the middle of nowhere. We should have dropped flyers all over a bunch of the cities, letting them know this is going to happen. And we should have dropped it rural. We should have dropped it rural.
Or on a base, like a base, like a military base. That would have been more morally.
Some kind of one military base that's away from everywhere else. Because I'm sure there was a lot of military bases. It was such a large radius that they were probably going to kill a lot of civilians regardless. And that, I mean, that's like one of my thoughts, is just like, we could have just dropped one in the middle of nowhere, and just so that they like, all right, guys, we have this, we're ready to use it. And then hit a military base after that. Like, cities.
And let's not forget who attacked who. I mean, Pearl Harbor was bombed by the Japanese fleet. So it's like, eye for an eye, I don't know.
I don't know
if that's, I mean, it's in excess if you have
armchair
quarterback.
Quarterbacks. Yeah. It's great for us to just all of us Americans just sit there and be like, oh speculate. We should have done this, should have done that. Well, I did think that his interaction with the president,
I think that's accurate. I think that
you think so?
Did,
you think that was pretty accurate?
I think he did overhear when he was leaving, don't let that crybaby come back, or whatever.
Something like
and I
that.
think that might have spearheaded his desire to dearm as many countries as he could before he died. Like so it's hard to say, because he does the thing he set out to do. He spearheads this project to build the atom bomb, and then he does a 180 and goes, this is wrong, we shouldn't have done this, and all this kind of stuff. So obviously there was a guilt in that person, even though the movie shows a psychopathy that I've been told that people who are psychopaths don't have empathy, but maybe the idea of killing that many people, maybe that drove him to become empathetic. And so he was like, we can't continue this with this bomb, which, the end scene after they drop it, the bombs on Japan, is very interesting, because he's giving a speech and he's sitting there and he's watching the people burn. Like, this is an imagination.
Yeah.
Like, this movie, that's why this movie is so surreal, is it has these moments where he's just imagining things. And it's interesting because he's walking out of that building, and he sees a couple making out, and then he looks again and they're actually crying. And there's a moment where he walks outside and he sees a man walking,
one of the scientists
throwing up. So basically, I think that's to convey their guilt over doing this, or his guilt over doing this. Like, he's just going, maybe this isn't what we wanted.
Christopher Nolan, in that, where he's talking to the people there, he does a lot of stuff there. There's a lot of stuff going on. I feel like he in visuals, he portrayed audience capture, where Oppenheimer's saying, he's just like, everybody's cheering him on, and he gets all caught up in the moment, and he starts saying stuff like, I wish we just got it, so we could have dropped it on the Germans, like all this stuff. And he's just like, he's wrapped up in the hype. And I think that it really well captured audience capture, which, if for those who don't know, audience capture is where a leader or somebody it's used on the internet a little bit, someone will, have maybe a little bit right wing views, but then as their audience like grows and grows and grows, their audience actually starts to dictate to them what they're saying.
Yeah.
And it kind of it can make
it influences people's decisions. The audience is influencing the person.
The audience is starting to influence that person's decisions. And so this leader, Oppenheimer, is like, everybody's like, yeah, woo, yeah, we did it, and he's kind of getting caught up in that. But then he's got a moral something that's saying, wait, something's wrong here. And it's showing that in visual, where he starts to see people. He starts to see a light, and he sees people burn, and he's walking out, and people are like congratulating him, shaking his hand, and then he looks down, and he stepped inside a burned corpse, and it's like all these emotions being portrayed visually, which was brilliant. It was it's really well done, brilliantly done. So
that's why I say he's always making this, and then underneath the surface, he's doing something else. And he did it in the Batman films. I think this movie is probably like a culmination of a matured filmmaker. Because you see the Batman films get better and better as they go along. Arguably the middle one was the best, and not the third one, but but he's grown as a filmmaker, and I just can't wait to see what else he does.
Yeah.
I do like, if I had to rank his movies, this one probably wouldn't be at the top. I liked it. It's almost too sobering to, I don't know. It's almost too sobering to enjoy.
I hope he does something that's a little more fun. The next project I hope is a little bit more fun coming out of Christopher
like a
Nolan.
Tenet or like an Inception or something like that.
Yeah.
But this also is very mature, and I think Tenet might have been his last, like, we're just doing this for fun kind of film. I think he might
Action.
have. Yeah,
the action.
the action film.
We'll see. Know. I mean, maybe he'll surprise us.
I like him in science fiction mode more than in historical mode. Yeah.
Because of Dunkirk and
well, Dunkirk was good. It just wasn't, I don't know. It just wasn't my favorite. He's always good.
Not one of the favorites.
He's always good. But Inception is a perfect film. Like, that is a perfect film. And it's aged well. You watch it and you're like, man, this is still really good. So and I think that's his legacy. Like, he's trying to do movies that you can just, 10 years from now pop in and go, oh man, this is still really good. And even the Batman films, I mean, maybe other than styles of phones and stuff like that have changed, it's still aged really well.
Who did Kingdom of Heaven? That was that was Ridley Scott.
Yeah.
Ridley Scott. What would be fun is a period epic from Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Wouldn't that be kind of cool?
Yeah, he is a big fan of Ridley Scott's films, so maybe that would
something
be a period epic of some.
But
you could argue that this and Dunkirk are his period pieces, because those take place during World War II.
Agreeably so. But I just kind of, my thoughts on it is just like maybe something like
Swords and Horses,
something medieval might be kind of cool.
Fun.
That might be kind of cool. So
I wanted to just say, so Emily Blunt plays his wife, who's depicted as a drunk. And I wanted to say, I don't like how this trend in Hollywood to make children out to be these burdens. But this is historical. That. This is
like the kid's always crying. Which
kid's always crying. It's made to look. This is historically accurate, though. He did actually ask a friend to take his kids for a short time, which is that's a terrible parent. And so there's this. So this is really interesting. So I judge this character, Oppenheimer, on his philandering ways and being a terrible parent, more than I judge him for making a bomb that killed 250,000 people. So I had this discussion with my wife. I said, what is that? Like, why am I putting this judgment on this character? And she had this really interesting take, and you tell me what you think about this. She was like, well, you can't build a bomb, but you can cheat on your wife and you can be a terrible parent. And that's why that's why you hold that judgment higher. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? That's an interesting thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I'm not judging him for inadvertently starting probably the end of the world. I'm judging him like as a character in this movie, not as a real human being, but as a character in this movie. I'm just thinking to myself, what a D-bag. He's messing around on his wife and he doesn't care for his children. A lot of people think that's the price of genius, right? I mean, people like James Cameron's got like 4 ex-wives and he's made some of the best movies of all time. It's like, is it possible that genius also means that you're a terrible human being? I don't.
It's like Ryan Holiday and Joe Rogan, their conversation where they're just like,
oh yeah, with
why is it that the kids of really great people are kind of shitty? And
maybe
Ryan was just like, I don't know, maybe because they get all that fame and glory because they're busy.
Yeah.
And they
and they don't care about
don't
their
give
kids.
a lot of time to their kids. I don't know.
But I thought that was an interesting take from my wife about your moral judgments on people, because it's obvious, like I could never build a bomb that killed a bunch of people because I don't have the capabilities, but I could, mess around on my wife, and I could, be a bad parent to my children. And that might be why I hold that moral standard to this character. Because I have a hard time with characters that are like that. I think one of the reasons that Breaking Bad was okay to me, because he never cheats on his wife in the entire series, but he also kills people. So it's like I'm probably not capable. Like,
oh geez.
So isn't that an interesting thought about morality?
Well, I'm pretty sure, like, on a level of being a bad person, committing murder and committing adultery. I don't know. I'm just saying. I think there's.
but see, that's so interesting to me, is like, maybe it's your own, like, it's an interesting moral thought process. And that's what this movie made me do, is like, yeah, he might have been a great man, but man, he was shitty to his kids and he was shitty to his wife. So it's like, I don't know how I guess you don't need movies with likable characters. And then maybe that's why movies feel so stale nowadays, is because if you're always trying to make a likable character, then they're stale movies.
Maybe that's why this is a heavy movie.
Yeah.
Is because there really isn't like a clear defined good guy or bad guy. It's just, it's a story of humans
dealing with most moral,
with all these moral dilemmas.
And dealing with a massive amount of moral dilemmas.
I've never really been a fan of movies that are realistic, that are realists in that way, because I always loved the story, even though fake and kind of like infantile. I always liked the story of the very clear good guy,
good moral
good person.
Yeah, me too.
And the very clear kind of bad guy, bad person. And I always was a big fan of those stories, because I felt like you prop up that, and Jordan Peterson talks a little bit to this, is just like you prop up that that North Star of like what you're aiming at. And I like movies where it's like, this guy was a good guy because he would do, what nobody else would do in this situation, et cetera, et cetera. But it's that North Star that you want to aim at, right? So and I think we want our heroes to be that.
Yeah. To be high moral character.
Yeah.
Because if we prop them up, if we prop our characters up to a high moral character, then they're worthy of emulation. Like we want
what we want to emulate towards, to become right. This is Christ for people.
Yeah.
For
Christ.
So that's what you're aiming towards and wanting to be like.
Well, and a movie like this,
but that's not Oppenheimer.
Yeah, it's not
like
Oppenheimer.
That's not this story, and that's okay. But it goes to show that it's just not one of my favorites of his.
Yeah,
and that's just my opinion.
It's just how it is. All right,
Yeah.
I guess we can bring this one home.
Wrap
So,
that one up. Yeah.
yeah. I guess any last thoughts on that? As far as just the movie, so the soundtrack is amazing. The visuals are real. It's really well shot. This is not a Hans Zimmer score. It's forget the name of the composer, because I love Christopher Nolan's composers, because he always gets these really surreal, beautiful sounding.
Yeah.
Just I really love. It's Ludwig Göransson. Ugh, that's I brutalized his name, but he's the new Christopher Nolan go-to guy for composing. I did think that this one was better than Tenant's. I liked Tenant's music, but not. I liked this music a little bit better. It kind of. I like how he uses music to perpetuate the ongoing of the story, like to keep going. I still think Hans Zimmer is probably his best composer, but Hans Zimmer is also in really high demand, so you can't always be doing Christopher Nolan movies.
And apparently a lot of people love working with him.
Yeah.
And that is kind of the case for them.
Well, that's what's so interesting about this movie, Michael, is that every character, even side characters that don't say hardly anything, are huge stars.
Yeah, some of them are these big stars. Yeah, it's
like Rami
kind of
Malek
crazy.
has gotten he's Academy Award winner now, and he has like 2 scenes where he has lines.
Yeah.
And then there's who, like, everybody, so there's so many characters in this that everybody is it's a little distracting because everybody's a familiar face.
Yeah.
Like, you do not see
You're
a
just
new
like,
person.
I've seen that guy. I've seen that guy.
Yeah. It's all the guy from Numbers is his Jewish friend that they talk about the morality of doing this bomb because they need to end the war because Jewish people are being sent into concentration camps.
Yeah.
That's the guy from Numbers, if you remember that show.
I don't.
Anyway, so yeah, there's a ton of just people just show up, and I'd like to say, like, he gets really good performances out of his actors. I think that Cillian Murphy and Robert Downey Jr. should both be nominated for these roles, because Robert Downey Jr. plays way against type.
Dude, I was blown away by Robert Downey Jr. I was just like, this is not Robert Downey. This is somebody else.
Yes.
And it is, to his acting abilities, amazing.
Yes.
I was blown away at how different he was.
I don't think he's acted since Iron Man. Really acted.
Anyway, but like it was good.
Yeah, it was really good. So I'd like to just say that about their characters, like, and Cillian Murphy really does. Like, I mean, you could look at that guy's face all day. Like, I don't know, Pinky Blinders, he's excellent in this. He's a force to be reckoned with too.
Yeah.
So overall, it's a pretty good movie. It's the one I was looking forward to all summer, and and I barely saw it before it left theaters. So, all right, I guess that'll do it for us. I mean, sometimes we get into the social issues of the time, and sometimes we just get into the movies of the time. So that's kind of how things go for us. Keep reading, keep listening, keep watching, learn more. We'll see you, brother.
See ya.